Just want to thank Coach Morrison from Shorter with us today for taking time to do this. And I know that in our eyes, and that he lives all the glory and the dream because he's a college coach and, you know, makes all the money and doesn't have to do any kind of planning or budgeting or, you know, have to attend any kind of meetings except for the meetings he sets. But for just one instance today, he does have something that he has to do after he gets off with us. So I wanted to honor his time and do that and let him get on to that. So we're not going to be on here too long today because he's got budget stuff, and you know, I'm sure he'll mention it here in just a moment. But this is the only time it's ever happened in his career, though, I'm sure, as a college coach, that he's had to do anything that he doesn't want to do. It's only high school coaches and below that have to do anything like that, I'm sure. But we really appreciate you being on here. I'm gonna, before you start or even do anything, I'm gonna ask Jay Cathy if he'll pray for us and get us started. And then I do want to thank Mike Morris for making this happen. Really appreciate this. In fact, Jay's not muted. There he is right there. I was going to make sure he wasn't doing something with his dog or whatever. Go ahead and pray for us, Jay, and then I'll just turn it over to Coach Morris.
Dear Heavenly Father, God, we just thank you so much for this time, Lord. We thank you for Coach Morrison being able to take time out of his schedule and to share what God's laid on his heart. God, we thank you for Robbie and his leadership and the coaches that are with us and those that aren't, Lord. You know that word uncertainty's been thrown around a lot, Lord, but we're in charge. We trust you. And we just ask for you to continue to move in our lives and for us to seek your face and your will in all that we do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. I'm going to mute everybody that's not muted, and then y'all can, if y'all get a question or whatever for Coach after this, as he gets going, y'all can unmute yourself. Oh, got Coach Hicks joining. All right, he's trying to join. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Coach. I appreciate you doing this. And I guess, obviously, you and Mike are related, but I guess he's shorter than you, is why he didn't have the sun on the end of his Morrison. Yeah. Good to see you, Coach Hicks. We're just now getting started. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Coach.
Are we there?
You're unmuted now. You're on the lead.
Okay. Yeah, it's you know, a lot of things you talked about, the lifestyle, the salary, all the meetings and stuff. That's a daily thing. I mean, we're having to do a lot of things, especially small private Baptist college. So we have the luxury of doing a lot of things, and even more sometimes than some of the state schools and the larger schools than us. But it is a blessing to work at Shorter, being a Christian university, being the place that I played football at and was able to get my degree from, and it's a blessing to be back. Robbie had mentioned a little bit about leadership, and that's kind of the focus of today. Just to give you an idea of who I am and where I'm from real fast. I'm from Forsyth County. I played football and went to high school at Forsyth Central High School. You know, I think that family plays a huge role in my life. Got two younger brothers, one that played at Samford. Dad played at University of Georgia on the national championship team. His claim to fame is the statue of Dooley outside the Buttsmere building. He's the one on the right lifting him off the field after they beat Georgia Tech to go to the national championship game in 1980. So we're a football family. My uncle played at Troy State. We loved the game, and was able to, you know, was getting recruited by the Woffords, Georgia Southerns, and Furmans of the world. Thought I was an FCS level player, all region 3 years, all state my senior year. You know, official visits, unofficial visits, man, it was a lot of fun. And, you know, it just ended up not panning out. Wofford went with a drop down, Southern went with a JUCO, Furman with an in-state kid. And, you know, after all the unofficial and official visits, I was kind of left in the dark, and the whole recruiting process kind of left me just confused and didn't know where I was going. So, and you probably have had some athletes in the same boat as that. So I went to a community college my first year of college, and Dad saw that Shorter was starting a program in 2005, and ended up walking on that year, and really coming to this place not knowing what it was or what it meant. I just knew that I was going to play football, and having a coach like Phil Jones, who was that Christian leader. He had been 30 plus years in high school, had been at University of Georgia, had gone to Gardner-Webb for a couple of years, and then got the head coaching job here, early 60s. So he was a little older than me when I took the job. But having a guy like that just said, we're going to build the program on relationships and build the program on trust and love. And really, I was confused, like, I'm just here to play football. Like, I don't need relationships. But, him saying, relationships with not just the players or the coaches they added, but most importantly, relationship with Christ. So had grown up in a Christian home. My middle brother was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, type 2. So he stopped walking at the age of 9. He's 32 in 2 months now. And he has gotten weaker and weaker and weaker progressively over the last couple of years. But, having him and having parents really stop going to church, and I would just kind of piggyback with some friends and ride with them, and then started driving myself. So, having a relationship with Christ, I was a Christian. I am a Christian, but I just sat there and I was like, I came to Shorter, and it would really just broaden my horizons and opened it up even more, especially having a coach for that and that would lead in that way. I ended up starting every game for 4 straight years, and was an all-conference for 3 years, an All-American for 2, and got into coaching. I was a GA here for a little while, and then Coosa High School down the road, got my first job there, and then had moved around the state, and actually was with Andy Scott my last trip at Kennesaw Mountain before taking the job here. So got inducted into the Hall of Fame at Shorter, which is an offensive lineman. It doesn't really happen, but I was the first football player that they inducted in the Hall of Fame. And then 5 years after that, so 10 years after graduation, they called and asked if I'd be interested in just meeting with them about the football program. And really and truly, I thought I was going to be on the hiring committee for someone, and what would I look for and the qualities I would look for in a coach. And really, it became an interview, and they offered me the job. So December of 17 was when they offered it. I was approved by the school and the university January of 18, and been here ever since. So a little over 2.5 years. But coming into from an assistant role really for 10 years to a head coach role, a lot of transition, a lot of change, a lot of responsibility, and really taking that leadership bull by the horns and just saying, hey, this is the things that I stand for. This is what I want to do. And man, I got into the Word a lot, and I started finding some things that some leaders in the Bible and some people that I could kind of just look at my life and go, man, this guy is similar to me. Because as coaches, I mean, there is a lot we cannot control. High school coaches, I mean, I was in your shoes for 10 years, so there's a lot we can't control, but there's a lot we can control. I mean, you look at what you have every year coming up. You look at the middle school program that you have. At least in college, we can recruit, we can bring some guys in and stuff like that. We can scholarship a lot of guys, but in terms of the things that we can control from high school, from college level, it's time, it's energy, and it's care into how much we invest in culture. I'm a big culture guy. I talk a lot about it. I talk a lot about who we are, what we stand for, and my mission statement. And the team sees it literally every time we have a meeting. We do mission statement, we do philosophy, we do a couple things, really everything that we stand for. It's my desire to help each and every student athlete develop to their full potential as football players, yes, as citizens in their community, but most importantly as Christians growing daily in their walk with Christ, because I know that this will carry with them for the rest of their lives because it happened to me. And I use myself as an example for that a lot, because I really didn't buy into the whole relationships thing when I got here. I've been in now 15 weddings of guys that I played college football with, because it became that brotherhood, it became that love, it became that trust, in one another. So the shorter really means a lot to me, and the people here mean a lot to me. But the thing, when we start talking about culture, we start talking about mission statements. Just to rewind a little bit, when I was searching and trying to figure out like what we need to hold on to, I really got into the book of Nehemiah. And there's a lot of leaders throughout the Bible, and sticking with someone in the Old Testament who, he was a cupbearer for the Babylonian king, and really just felt led by God to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem that had been destroyed for 140 years. 50 years prior, they tried to rebuild, failed. So it had been 140 years. You have people conquering the city back and forth in Jerusalem. The walls of Jerusalem had been destroyed. Nehemiah had a vision. And I know that, when I got here, that was one of the purpose behind it. We needed a vision for this place because, as bad a shape as it was, I walked in the doors and literally I'm looking at everything from 2005 and nothing had changed. And some of y'all I talked to about it a little bit, but 2008 was my senior season, and the 18 season, there were about 37 helmets that they expected me to use. And there was 30 helmets from 2009 and 25 from 2010. The majority of the helmets even used for the program were almost obsolete. And with the change in technology, and football coaches on here know that I didn't trust it. I didn't want them. So, you have to have a vision. So we raised a little over $60,000 in 3 months and really outfitted every single player in a brand new helmet. And it's been a whirlwind essentially since we've been doing that. But just to head back to Nehemiah, he had a vision, he had a purpose. His purpose was to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. He set an example on how to live his life. I mean, you could read through Nehemiah and what he did, what he stood for. He saw corruption. He saw things that needed to be addressed. He had workers that were willing to work to rebuild the wall and die. You had guys guarding the wall. You had some building the wall because he knew he was going to get verbally and physically attacked. And that's, you look at that and you hear about that and you're like, he's walking into just a firestorm right there. Here's a guy that he knows that this is going to be almost impossible, but he has a plan to get it done. He's a leader, and he wants to get it done. So one verse that we talk a lot about with the team, because that's really, I've been holding on to Nehemiah in the sense of what we've been trying to do, because again, this place was not in great shape when I took it over. But Nehemiah 2:20, the God of heaven is the one who will give us success, and we his servants are going to start rebuilding. I use the phrase just building there for my guys, so they know that we're just building this thing back up. So he is rebuilding the wall. Nehemiah needed to be the leader. Rebuilding a destroyed wall is different because Nehemiah was compelled to serve God. So Nehemiah, he knew that the overall purpose wasn't about him. It wasn't about him at all. It wasn't about the people. It was about serving God and doing God's will. And guys, you think about just what we do as coaches, and a lot of y'all are teachers, and some weight room, some in the classroom. I was an AP U.S. history teacher. I was the head wrestling coach offensive line at Kennesaw, and then before that, Statesboro. I was all over the state. So, we get tired. It can drag on a little bit, and there are some moments there where you're like, man, I am exhausted. I am tired. I want to see fruit. I want to see fruits of the labor. I want to see something that is showing me that I'm doing it right, or the kids are understanding, or they're grasping in the classroom, on the field, whatever it may be. I want to see some kind of results. And in Nehemiah, you can look, and there's a guy named Baruch. I'm going to butcher these names because they're Old Testament names. Son of Zabiah. He was one of the workers. He was one of the guys that was rebuilding the wall. And you talk about just tedious, long. You're doing the same thing day after day with very little results, especially for just one worker. But as a common goal, every single one working, you're going to see results. But that one worker on that one section, you're going back day after day after day, and you're not seeing a whole lot of results. But the Bible says, Bible says that he was just filled with zeal. Okay, a zealous person is one who is filled with enthusiastic devotion to a goal. So here's a guy, he comes to work every day. He's positive. He's encouraged. When a lot of people, a lot of coaches, a lot of people like us can get discouraged. We can get tired. We can get frustrated because we haven't seen results, or we want to see them faster. And, especially with the way society works now. Society works as, get rich quick or lose weight fast, or this can happen overnight, and you can get change overnight. But when we know that it's going to take time, it's going to take that if you follow Twitter or whatever, it's going to take that brick by brick process. It's every single person working for a common goal. And if we can remain enthusiastic on that, man, it makes a world of difference. And again, the goal for rebuilding was not for Nehemiah, it was to glorify God. So Nehemiah 5:9, in Nehemiah 5:9, you start seeing Nehemiah talk about some issues he was dealing with, okay? There were some characteristics of some people, some character flaws, character issues that he had to deal with. So, you look at him stopping the building and addressing those character issues, saying, we're not doing this for the people in the Pharisees and the tax collectors and all these people. We're doing this for God. We're not doing this for just the tax collectors. So there were some character issues he had to deal with. And, I think back to my first 5 months here, and the previous coach had just said, if you can get out of here and you can transfer. They didn't announce me until January. A lot of kids had already left. I walked in the door with about 37 players. And, some of them, majority of the team the previous season was JUCO. I would say there was about 55 junior college players on the roster, which there's nothing wrong with junior college, but, there were some discipline issues. There were some academic issues, a ton of academic issues. And there were, some mindsets and some character flaws, we'll just call them that, of some guys that said, I'm above all of this. I'm above this person and that person, and I don't have to do the same thing they're doing. And literally laying out a standard, laying out a set of principles. This is who we are. This is what we're going to stand for. We had, 7 quit in the first 2 weeks. We had get right runs on Friday morning at 5 a.m. And, we had a kid that we even nicknamed Can't Get Right because he just couldn't do right. We do class checks. He wasn't there. He would be late to workouts. So there were some character flaws that had to be addressed. And really and truly, you look at this rising senior class. This is the last group of kids that I didn't recruit. We have 7. We have 42 rising juniors on the team this year of my first class. But the school essentially, they said, Coach, we got to have over 100 players your first year. So I had to go out that first season and literally just, bring whoever I could bring in, and had scholarship money, had a lot of stuff, was able to pull in a pretty good recruiting class. And of the class that I brought in, you got 42 rising juniors that remain from that class. So 60% of that class, 70% of that class is still here. But some truths from Nehemiah. I was doing some studying on him and really looking at his life and what he did and what he stood for, and just understanding a little bit more about him in the book of Nehemiah. Number one, there's 7 truths. Number one, God rebuilds broken things. So, we talk about our faith, our relationships. A lot of things that we've been talking about here is just rebuilding this program and getting it back on track. So God rebuilds broken things. God powerfully works when we patiently wait. As hard as that is, if you just think about that in the grand scheme of things, being patient. I look at it a little differently, because having a brother that's in a wheelchair, that can't walk, that can't cook food, that can't bathe himself, that can't go to the bathroom on his own, like, talk about patience. You need to have a conversation with my brother, because he literally sits and waits in bed every day until someone gets him out of bed. And when I was down in Statesboro, I was his primary caregiver For 3 years, I was the head wrestling coach. I was the run game coordinator. I was extremely involved in the community. And, you talk about lack of social life, didn't have one because I wanted to be there for my brother, but how patient he was in those years that he lived with me, because he'd get up and he graduated from Shorter, actually he got a business degree online with them. So, but I try to push that to the team and to the players, because I do the same thing Coach Jones, my coach, did. I mean, it's about building relationships. It's about building that trust. So the players know who I am, they know what I stand for, and they know my family, they know my faith. So I think that's something that they know they can trust me and believe in me. The third one is, when we rise to rebuild, opposition rises to resist. That's going to happen in whatever you do. When you're trying to fix something, there's going to be opposition that tries to resist or stop. There's going to be kids that don't want to be involved. There's going to be parents that think, they know more than us or more than you, or why isn't my kid playing, or what's going on, or why aren't you recruiting this kid? There's going to be opposition to resist rebuilding anything. So, and that's high school, that's middle school, that's college. I mean, there's going to be opposition. Number 4, rebuilding is a group project. It's not just one guy. Nehemiah had a vision, but it was thousands of people working to rebuild the wall. So this is not just an individual project. I can have a set of goals and a vision and a set of ideas on what I want to do, but it's not just me. It's the staff. It's the support staff. It's the volunteers that I have. I had 4 volunteers last year that literally just came to work every day, and they wanted to be a part of a college football program. So we had 15 coaches on staff last year that were working. So it was great. But it's the camera operators. I've got some kids that do that. I've got one guy in grad school it's not just me. It's not just Nehemiah. It's not just the head coach. It's a group project. Number 5, rebuilding is full of distractions. So you may be on that right track and you may be on that straight and narrow, but there's going to be some things that are in your way that you're going to stop and be distracted by. So, whether it be for us, it may be just a player's family, some things going, it could be our families, it could be situations going on at home, but there's going to be distractions. Number 6, rebuilding projects that last are done by the book. They're done by, think about done by the book, exactly how the book says. So projects that are made to last. I think about just furniture that's made to last. I mean, we've got some things from IKEA still around from our college days, and man, that stuff is it's pretty cheap. And then you look at, and you're spending a little bit more money on a quality piece of furniture because it was done correctly, it was done right, it was built to last. And then number 7, rebuilding projects are ultimately soul projects. It's you need to dig within your soul and figure out what you want, what you stand for, and again, what you can project to your team. Because this is FCA coaches huddle. I mean, what can you do for your team? And search your soul. I mean, it's really a challenge to figure out, how you want to go about it. But really, the idea, the concept of vision, that's in every one of us. I talk about vision and purpose a lot with our guys, and I ask their why, because you look at Division II private school compared to a West Georgia, Valdosta State, an Albany State, a Fort Valley, all Division II state schools. We're private, so you look at these guys that are here, the over 100 guys on the roster, and a lot of them are paying money to go to school. There's a good substantial amount of them, 65 kids, 70 kids that are receiving some kind of athletic scholarship money, and it ranges. I mean, I have the ability to do a little to a lot, but you have a budget, and you got to stretch that budget as far as you can. So, I even ask their why. Like, why are you here? I tell the team why I'm here. I'm here for each and every one of them. I'm here for that mission statement that I read to them at the beginning of the meeting. Every time we get together, I'm here for them to grow a relationship with Christ. And I have the ability to say that working at a private school, which is great. But they've got to know and they've got to believe in a positive viewpoint. They've got to have belief in you and in your vision and what you stand for. And you look at, the amount of guys we have coming back, the amount of guys that will be, 3-year starters coming up this year, or a 4-year starter for those couple seniors that stuck around. Those guys, they believe, they want it. One of the coolest things that happened to me was this past December. 6 months ago, before the guys left for winter break, we have a leadership council that these guys draft a team, and one or two of the kids on the leadership council had texted me, and they said, "Hey, Coach, I wanted to say goodbye before we left. A couple of us want to see you." I walked down to the office, and there's like 30 guys that are down there, and they said, "Whatever we got to do when we come back in January, whatever we got to do, we want to win, and we want to be pushed, and we want you to recruit the best class you can recruit. Like, we want it that bad." So January, we pushed the limits. February mat drills, we're up at we're on the field at 5 a.m. Going to about 7. We're hitting those mat drills hard, and a couple of days a week. They're getting workouts. They're 5 days a week and 4 days a week. In March, we were going back to 4 days a week as well, before spring practice was canceled. And a lot of y'all's spring practice football guys was canceled, but they have a belief in what we're doing. So if you can establish that belief, man, it makes a world of difference. There's a quote that I read to them. So if you want to accomplish great things together, you got to believe together. So they know that they've got to work together. This isn't just an offense and a defense and a special teams unit. This is everyone. This is Shorter University working together. And they got to know that we may be in this position. Here's last year. Here's the last 5 years. Here's last year, here's yesterday, here's where we want to go. This is the progress on what we want to make. And I'm like, I want us to get 1% better. That's literally what I ask for every day. I said, I want us to get 1% better than we were the previous day. That's all I want. If you can improve every single day in the weight room, in the classroom, on the field, in your relationship with Christ, then you are bettering yourself. So I really push for that. I bring that up a lot. I'm like, just 1%. 1% is the bare minimum. If you can get 10% better in a day on just something, then you're improving. But that's really what we deal with a lot. So, we're here today, but this is where we're going to go. If they know and they have that, you give them that vision of where we're going, then they will trust, they will believe. And, we saw some fruit last year, not very much. There was some positive aspects that came out of last year, but, knowing that of what's to come, that's what's got the guys so excited for this year and for 2021. So, Robbie, that's really, I think, what I got for you today.
Coach, I appreciate that. I'm going to say I've got you highlighted, and I'm going to try and figure out how to. Okay, there we're back there. Really appreciate that. Coach, you said 2005, and Coach Jones, now he didn't go until like 07 or 08, did he? Or
05. He's the inaugural coach.
The reason I was asking that, as is Jenny, his wife. I came on staff, started trying to come on staff with FCA in 07, and she was out in Polk County and all in that area. And for some reason, I thought Coach Jones had just gotten the position up there, but maybe it's just because I had just met him is the only reason I knew the connection.
Hired at the end of 2004 to start hiring a staff, and 05 was the first season that they had.
I'm gonna ask a question myself, and first say that it's really neat, and I don't know how we became friends on Facebook. We became friends on Facebook. Maybe I'm just one of your followers, and I'm a stalker or something. I don't know, but it's I've seen a lot of cool stuff on there, and seen things that you've been posting about that kind of coincide with what you're talking about now. But to hear you talk and to hear you share, it's admirable to listen to you and talk about how you're trying to do your leadership, and then you're bringing guys along with you. And of course, I had heard that about Coach Jones, and he came and spoke for some things for me, maybe one of my football banquets or something, and I had got to be around him. And of course, probably one of the largest reasons of his success is like mine is his bride. She's just an incredible woman. But to see how you're doing that, I wanted to ask you, what were some of the things that you were able to do? I don't know the proper way to ask it, because all of us have been a part of something where we needed to get some of the bad apples out.
Yeah.
Like you said, you lost 7 in the first and all this stuff, and you had those JUCO attitudes and things like that, or, whatever the good, right phraseology of that is. But how can some people do that? Because we've all been and sometimes we've got ourselves stuck in a position to where we're like, one, we're going to win, or in this case, there's even more parents to deal with, or maybe not that you don't have to deal with parents, but it's really, from what I've seen, it's not the same as
Right.
in school and junior program. So,
Right.
so what's some ways maybe that can happen, to weed it out?
Whew, I mean, ours is pretty simple. We can just cut their scholarship money. That makes things really easy, and telling them that they won't be on scholarship anymore. And academics plays another role for us, because if they drop below 2.0, then they are ineligible. But that got rid of a couple guys at the end of the semester for us as well. I think that's difficult. You look at, you've got some bad apples in there. How do you get rid of them? I think that accountability from your leaders. I had a kid that was a freshman last year. He was a Cobb County kid, and he actually got to start 4 games at tackle for us, and on a good scholarship. And after the semester, he just said, Coach, I think I'm just going to transfer to UGA. And I said, well, your GPA is not good enough to transfer. You need to stick it out. And I would like you to, see if you get the love back, and see if you would like, because he's a great kid. He was a good player for us. And I had 3 offensive linemen come to me about 2 weeks later, and they said, he's done. I said, what do you mean? They said, we told him he's done. He's not coming back. So he doesn't want to be a part of this thing. He doesn't want to be here. And I said, okay. Because it was really more, the way I felt it when I met with him was more of a parental kind of, the parents want him to go to UGA. It wasn't so much him, because he sat there and told me and the offensive line coach, I want to stay. I want to be here. My parents don't want me here. And I'm like, okay. So that's why I said, you continue to do what you need to do. You're on scholarship this semester. And then I had a couple of guys say, he's just not vested. We don't want him here. So having an accountability team, we had, I spread it out. So I did have a freshman or 2 on this leadership council. And I mentioned, I let them literally do a mock draft where I gave them a list of names. They had to alternate between offense, defense. And I met with those guys every week for 30 minutes, and they earned points for team activities or, weight room stuff, and they would lose points if we did class checks, or if they had someone late to workouts or to mat drills or whatever it may be. And those are the guys that came to me and said, he doesn't need to be here. And I said, well, in the next leadership meeting, let's talk about it. And everyone's consensusly said, yeah, we don't want him here. So I know that's kind of a challenge in high school to do that. But if the senior leadership, junior leadership come together and really don't feel like this person is helping us, if they're a bad apple, then, I think that's a sit down with that person and saying, and possibly their family, and just saying, hey, this is not working out. I mean, your attitude's got to change, or you're gone.
It's almost like, from my experience seeing with some of these high school coaches, that it's almost like you got no choice but to let a kid be on a team, and you just don't have a choice. That's what kind of I've seen. And I admire when, like you said, you made the decision, this is how we're going to do it. Now, I mean, it is a little bit different, but it's still leadership.
Right.
And there were some times when I first came on staff with FCA, and not long after I came into Paulding County and FCA, well, there were some things that just needed to happen and all. And because I was worried about some of the community aspects or feedback or bad stuff. I don't know how to put it. Just, that how some things might look or what people might say and all. I put off making some very tough decisions for a little while. And then some things came together and it happened, and, there's hurt feelings and all this kind of stuff that takes place that a lot of people don't have a clue of what was going on with some other things, but it still happened. But it made me really take a look at myself and really impacted me big time, and said the failure for me to make some of the tough decisions reflected my leadership or lack thereof. And I tried to go from there and say that from now on, I've got to make tough decisions and just do it because I know God knows my heart, and I'm saying that this is what we're going to build on and this is how we're going to do things. And I had to be able to just say, you know what? I'm the one that has to sleep at night with it. Now, it may be a bad decision or turn out to be a wrong decision, and I am the first one that I will come back and say, hey, I made a bad decision. Let me try to correct it, blah, blah, blah. But I just tried to make a commitment really to not just God, but to myself and to what we're doing, that I'm going to try and build something that I feel like is the vision for FCA and what I believe. I know it's how the mission statement and the vision is for FCA, but trying to get things back in the box and trying to change this, I've been involved for 13 years and it's been tough, and we're just now starting to see a lot of things come to fruition. But so that's why I was wondering, because a lot of times I'll be talking to these coaches and I'm just like, get rid of the kid. And like, well, my principal makes me do this or this happens and stuff. And, I don't know. And
documentation goes a long way in that regard for me as well, especially if I'm cutting a kid, cutting their scholarship money. I document everything. Circumstances that happen at practice or in games, or if there was an issue where a kid's, for whatever reason, back talking to coach, that's one thing I learned with HR. I mean, they want documentation on everything. So, and it takes time and it's not fun, but it helps in that regard.
I don't ask that just to try and get a bunch of kids, but the idea is that everybody on here wants to build something or be a part of building something. And, because we've got assistant coaches and head coaches on here, and that's what it takes. And it takes it at every level, because even these coaches, they may, basketball may have she's got other coaches that work with this part of the team or do this, you want everybody rowing in the same direction, as opposed to the opposite direction. Does anybody, y'all want to ask Coach if any questions or add to some of the stuff he was saying? And, it's a great word. Heck, he had 8 or 9 points. Heck, I struggle with 2 points on some of my messages. Unmute yourself and do it. Everybody's got the capability to do that. And also, while we're waiting on somebody to unmute themselves, I didn't realize Brooke told me that I was cutting out, my sound was cutting out when I was kind of turning it over to you in the beginning. I didn't realize that. Sometimes you get on the, don't really know that what you're doing. That was me. I was ordering a large and a big. Go ahead, Kenny.
Coach, how's Nehemiah Bean doing?
Nehemiah is doing great. Nehemiah he is on that leadership council. He's been a guy that we can trust and count on. He's an RA now. I mean, he is super involved. Great kid. He calls me at least twice a week. Like, Coach, I want to be back. I can't wait to get back on campus. So he wants to be here. He's one of those guys that wants to turn this thing around. He wants to be a part of it. So Nehemiah, so for those of y'all that don't know or have heard of Nehemiah Bing, he played offensive line in Paulding County. And he started 22 games for us. So he'll be a rising junior. I mean, he will have started, if he can consistently hold on to the job, which I think he will. I mean, 44 games in his career at Shorter. So.
Yeah, Nehemiah is an exceptional young man. He really is. Good question, Kenny. I forgot. I was sitting here racking my brain. Who have we got up there to ask him about? And then
So East Paulding, we've got Maverick Herring coming in. North Paulding, we've got Brent Silvar. Well, he went to North Paulding and Gordon Central, but he finished at North Paulding. And he's been a two-year starter. He started, 4 or 5 games the first year, and last year he started like 9 at linebacker. And then Maverick's coming in, and then we've got Maverick's going to play lacrosse and football, as well as Jack from North Paulding.
That's cool. Heck, I don't know what it is, Coach, but another way that I admire you is you actually got Coach Julian Hicks on our Bible study. We've been trying to get him on here for months.
Hey.
There he be right there.
Wait a minute. Hold on, man. I ain't going to let you talk junk about me.
All I know is he's got some juice. And
There you go. Hey, is Makai Johnson still up there, Coach?
Makai left the program after the semester.
Okay.
So he did well in school. He had over a 3.2 in GPA wise, but we redshirted him, and he I don't know. I think he didn't even meet with me at the end. I think he just cashed out. But he's a great kid. I liked him.
That's very surprising, just because, like you said, he is a good kid. But that's surprising. Coach, I do have a question for you too.
Yes, sir.
I know you talked about cutting guys and documentation, and I think we all as coaches have this same challenge of you got a tweener where he may be a knucklehead, but you kind of feeling like you can make a difference. I guess my question to you would be, when do you come to the crossroad where his baggage is outweighing his athleticism? Because a lot of times we deal with a bunch of kids who have issues, and no kid is perfect by any means. And so I think a lot of times, we as coaches, we try to give second chances and third chances. But I guess when is enough for you? Is it when he lies to you? Is it when he, steals? When do you come to that crossroad?
Yeah, if someone's stealing, then we got a major issue. I'm an extreme optimist, man. I try to find the best in everybody. Like I think that each person can reach a certain plateau peak. I want these guys to do as well as they can, but you're right. There are some times where, and we've had it in the last 2.5 years, where you have a guy that will talk a big talk, but he continues to just let you down and let the team down. And for us, you have class schedules that may get in the way a little bit. We really don't have anyone that totally misses practice, but we have, if they're in their major and they're in their junior and senior year, they may have a class that runs into a meeting time where they have to leave like maybe 20 minutes early at the end of practice for an evening class that they only offer once a week. Stuff like that we understand. But when kids just don't show up and they don't communicate, and if it's a kid that it never happens to, then we're like, okay, there must be a circumstance. The assistant coaches have a system. They want them to always reach the assistant coaches first, and then the coordinators, then me. I'm really involved. I'm super involved, and I'll straight up just text kids going, hey, where you at? Like, what's going on? Is there a family? Sometimes family issue, and I have most of the parents' phone numbers, and I have access to all of them through the school, so I can call and say, hey, is everything going on within the family? I don't want to pry, but I just wanted to let you know that so-and-so wasn't at practice today or the last 2 days. But yeah, to answer your question, I think that, if someone's stealing, then we're going to suspend them from the program, and may or may not give them the option of working their way back on and proving themselves. But I think that, I think when they start affecting the program in a negative light, and you start having not just assistant coaches, but you start having like people within the school and players on the team going, Coach, man, this guy, it's we can't trust him. And, then you start having those, thinking about, like Robbie was saying, those tough decisions and trying to make, what do we need to do with this kid? And we've been able to recruit great kids where it hasn't happened a lot, because we have that we have that standard. We have those get right runs on Friday morning that they hate because they don't want to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. So, no, I think that it's just case by case, but, stealing is a suspension for us. If they're letting us down, if they're not showing up, if they're not present, if their attitude is just terrible, we'll bring them in. They'll sit the coordinators. If they need to sit with me first off, then, they have a system of, you got your warning, you're going to sit with a coordinator or position coach. And then third is with me to talk about suspension or just talk about what the heck is going on with them. Because 18 to 22, girlfriends, parents, school issues. It's like never ending in terms of issues. So I'll talk to them, but yeah, if they affect the team negatively, then we've got to start looking at other options. And yeah, that's kind of what I got for that.
And, it seems like that at the high school level, obviously they're still somewhat in their formative years. Really and truly, their character and so much is already formed in a lot of ways, and y'all are fighting an uphill battle. It's, kind of when they get to college, just welcome to adulthood, and, a lot more it can be a lot more severe. And I know that the high school coaches, especially in, of course, our county's not as watered down as Cobb County, but the population obviously has grown to support a lot more talent in schools and stuff. But, we're looking in Paulding County, 167,000 people. We're looking for 5 quarterbacks, 5 tailbacks, 5 tight ends, all that stuff, or 5 pitchers. When it's a fast pitch softball, she's looking for 5. Really, I guess we're probably looking for 10 or 11, depending on how many games y'all got a week, how many pitchers you need for that week, and for how many games. And when needing that kind of stuff, and it's a little bit more difficult. For Kelly, everybody's looking for 5 or 8 point guards, and to do that, and it's very hard. And then you get one, and you see some talent there, and it's very hard. I made that decision on my leadership some years ago, but then just a few years ago, 3, 4, 5, something like that, I hired somebody in a female position that was just a failure. But I was I wanted and was looking for female ministry for so long that I put up with so much stuff that, I wanted to, but I dealt with it, and I put up with thinking maybe it would change. Maybe if I did this, and then I realized it wasn't me. I wasn't an issue.
Right.
And us as leaders and control freaks, we think we can control so much, and that's what sometimes we get I think we could start battling is we think we can change this person, or we think if we do something different, it can change. And to release that has been very difficult for me at times, to say, hey, I can't, I'm doing that. I know that I'm doing everything I can do. And then to make that tough decision is hard. Any other questions?
Yeah, Zach, I got a question. I know that you can kind of weed out the bad eggs, through the recruiting process. But when you get kids that come from multiple different backgrounds into the environment that you guys have at Shorter, what are some of the strategies that you use to help develop their character as a person?
So we do when we do our team meetings, it's essentially a devotional as well in that, and it's not long, but having those, I think having that leadership council and meeting with them, and then giving them an objective. Hey, this is what we want to talk about. And early on, it's stuff that's not really relevant. It's just like, what would be your ideal job or something like that? Or what would, if you won $1 million, what's the first thing you do or something like that? Just something really simple. And then getting into a little bit more about their family, about their relationship, about, and And if they can trust, that sophomore, that junior, that senior, and that little 10-guy bond, because all I ask for is 30 minutes a week of meeting with those guys. I can't sit down with every single group every week and make sure they're doing it. But we have leaders set up that I know they're doing it, because we go back the next week and I always follow up with, hey, hey Chip, how did the meeting go about, the relationships, and, who is their hero? Has their hero gone through any hardships? What are some highlights of your hero's life? And when you have those guys start opening up about that, and I don't really, we get back and we circle with the core group of the leadership council, I'm like, did you have anybody step up? I said, if you don't have to get too detailed, but then they'll say, yeah, we had Silas talked about his dad and what his dad has done for his family, worked 3 jobs, really growing up. And, that kid's full Pell. His family does not have a lot of money, and he was on some scholarship money, but he was still paying, about $7,000 a year to go to school. And to have that and have a dad that you hear he's working 3 jobs a week, or 3 jobs a day just to make ends meet for the house, for the family, for the kids. You're just like, man alive. And they start building that bond and that love for each other. And that was really the whole point of this, because I was like, you're drafting a team. And I said, this is a team that you're gonna need to draft a team based on academics. I said academics first, because you'll get points for that, based on athletic ability, based on what they do in the weight room, and then based on character. So, I said, that's your parameters. That's all I'm telling you. Go. And then each of them drafted, 10 guys on their team, 11 guys on their team. And, if there are character issues, if there's issues in class, I told the kids, if I get a negative email about them being disrespectful in class, then that's taking points away from their team, their guys, that bond that they've created. They don't want to let that bond down. And I do get them some extra gear at the end of the semester, whoever wins. So they're like, man, they got an extra hoodie and a hat last year. I want that hoodie and hat. But I think having those interpersonal relationships between the team, because offense, defense, man, we do some things together, but a lot of stuff at practice, when we break up, it is scout O versus first and second, maybe some third string D, scout D, first, second, some third string offense. Boom, there you go. Opposite sides of the field, and they don't see each other for about 45 minutes of practice. They see each other for special team stuff, but really, and then team-wise, just so we can do a proper head count, when we meet, defense, offense, so we can make sure all our guys are there. So we make them sit separately when we do team meetings, just so we can – so having them do things together and build that bond together when you have a linebacker, O-lineman, kicker, DB, running back, all in the same group, they're like, man, I know that guy. I know he'll fight for me. So
it's so hard to find somebody that's willing to build or to revamp, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, is, because it's taken so long, with just using FCA as an example. For so long, all FCA was in Paulding County in particular, but really in a lot of the areas around here, it was about the Friday morning huddle when the students would come in, and they'd have somebody come in and speak, and have some white guy with a guitar, singing a song, and it's basically another youth meeting, and it was great, and that is great. That's huge to have, and that's still important. But these coaches on here, and the coaches, period, you coaches are the cream of the crop. FCA is about the coach, to and through the coach, and realizing the value of a coach to try and point him because of y'all's leadership. And it's taken, and it's still not there totally, but taken so long to get people to see that. The kids are important, but the kids will be impacted if the coach is impacted. You impact the leader and you'll impact them all. And to try and do that, and even though with even the huddles on the campuses, to talk to those leaders, they're just talking about, let's do a rally, let's do this, let's do that. And and let's get more people. But to try and get him to build the small things and start a foundation has been incredibly difficult. And it's just now getting to where I'm getting people, even with staff and people coming on staff, to see that let's go to the team and the coach. Let's go smaller to go bigger. Because if we begin to impact those with that influence and make a difference with them, I promise you the other stuff will begin to take care of itself. And there's been more than one weeping episode at different times, just trying to get that stuff across. And I admire anybody that's willing to do that, and really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, Coach. If nobody's got anything else, he needs to get off and go have coffee and a cigarette before he's got to go to his meetings, I'm sure. Nobody?
I just got, if it's okay, I got one quick question. By the way, I coached Nehemiah through middle school. He grew up in my house, man. Him and my son were really good friends. So he is outstanding, just like you said. Always has been an outstanding young man. And then, of course, I got to coach Maverick. Now I'm at East, so both of them are you're definitely recruiting character kids. And then my daughter's going to play basketball at Shorter, so I'm a huge fan, Coach. By the way, all right. So I'm fangirl over here. But when you choose your leadership, I think one of the things that we run into in high school, especially, is we have leaders that us as coaches want to be leaders. And then we have those kids that are kind of on the border of, we don't really want our kids to follow them, but our kids naturally follow them. So how do you differentiate between those kids that are natural leaders that you don't necessarily want to be a leader, between the kids that we want our kids to be leaders, if that makes sense? And, I think that's one of the hardest things to follow. And how have you seen that? And I know you're still kind of, you're probably still new in the process, and will let me know a couple of years later on how that goes.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate that?
We have some guys that want to be leaders, that want to be vocal, that maybe speak up and say some stuff. And, usually within the group, I don't deal with language. We don't use language on the field. And so even with the kids, if I hear something, then I'm always shutting it down really quick. But you have some guys that want to step up and they want to hoot and holler and scream, and then I'll have to address that individual and just saying, hey, that's not who we are. That's not what we're doing. I think that even pulling those kids and doing some one-on-ones with those kids that maybe think that they want to be leaders and they like to hoot and holler, and kids like to follow them because they're super athletic, but they're just not that they're bad for the team, but they're just not the right person to follow. But just doing those one-on-one sit downs, just saying, hey, what's your goal? What do you want to do? And, if you start bringing up these questions about life, even for a 16 or 18-year-old kid, they start going, well, I want to go to the NFL. Well, going to the NFL or going to play college football, it requires you to do everything the right way. And if you want examples, I'll give you 150 examples on all these guys that have played big-time college football or in the NFL that have done things the right way all the time. And, we've done that with a couple kids. We're still, going into year 3, haven't seen it a ton. So, yeah, you're right. I can't give you just a great answer on that. But, having those one-on-ones with them. And I know it's difficult when you're teaching and you're coaching and trying to meet with the kid. But even just pulling them out of class, if you got a planning period for 5 minutes and just saying, and maybe following up with them with a text or a call, every week or something like that. I think that I'm huge on communication. I'm huge on reaching out to the kids. We have the group chat, so the whole team hears from me, and then individually I'll go through offense and defense. They'll get at least individual texts once or twice a week from me asking about family or what's going on, or but if you can keep up the communication with those kids that maybe aren't so much the leaders that you want, but the kids follow, and start prodding them with more and more questions about how they plan on doing this, or, can you read up on something on leadership or about teamwork and what this is? I mean, I gave, and this is not for you could do it potentially for a kid. I don't know how they would do it, but I gave every single staff member John Gordon's book, The Power of Positive Teamwork. And I even gave it to the president of the university and the athletic director and the CFO, because we've got to work together. So understanding what that looks like and what that means, I think that's huge. And if you could get a kid to do, a book study, which that may sound totally ridiculous to have a 17-year-old kid actually read a book, or just give them a section and say, hey, read this and tell me what I don't know. I'm spitballing a little bit, but that's kind of just a thought.
That's good. Also, we that's really what our captain's camp was designed for, Jonathan. We do a captain's camp. We ask coaches to identify a leader, the leaders on their team, and if they're leading them to hell, we don't care. We're asking you to identify them and let us take them to our captain's camp for a weekend and pour into them to see if we can have an impact on them, to let them bring that back to the team, and just identify the leaders and be willing to try and invest in them and, try to influence them a little bit. Obviously, you can't make it mandatory for them to come to our camp, but to do that. And then there's a great book that Steve Horton, I know Jonathan knows who that is, but he's got my copy. I'm going to get some copies and give to some other coaches. It's a book on, I think the name of it was Caleb, by Francine Rivers. I think just a little bitty book, an easy read, that, and it talks about, Joshua was the leader. They both went through the same stuff, and I'm not going to go through it all, but bottom line is Caleb was his assistant coach, and he did the stuff and there are, even on our kids, our players, some of them need to be Caleb, and maybe we get some of these guys that aren't leading properly, but we get some of these kids that want to be leaders or that are good and that can be around and try to some kind of subtly start influencing that other leader. I don't know. It's just a thought I had when he was talking about that, and when Jonathan was saying what he was saying. But the truth is there's some kids that want to be leaders, and they're great young men. Nobody wants to follow them, and and that's very difficult on that. We want to, and then we got our control issues that we think we can change the one that's leading them to hell or leading them in the wrong way.